Welcome to Moscow, everyone. Before we start, I'd like to introduce our gracious host, Alexander Shumsky, President of Russian Fashion Council and Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week Russia, to share a few remarks.
Hello, thank you for joining us and thank you for attending. And I would say I'm not a host. Stefan, you are the host of this session because when we started a few years ago, the Fashion Futurum Forum, it was a physical event. It was, old great days, and almost everybody who is joining us this session were participating here in Moscow. I'm staying in Moscow. But today it's a huge challenge how to make Moscow and other capitals buzzy and thrilling, and how to make the fashion industry working well. Because in my opinion, the biggest challenge now for the fashion industry is that the fashion is depending on the community and on the social networks. And when community is locked down and when everybody is sitting at home and nobody goes to the office, nobody goes to the restaurant, nobody visiting friends and family, the fashion goes down because nobody is buying new outfits. And this is sad because fashion is the most, the biggest and most practical creative industry in the world. And the fashion making the cities and the capitals bright and so on. But now it's changing, and changing very, very fast, because to sell fashion is quite complicated, and for independent designers, it's a huge challenge. And I think that the most important thing right now for the industry and for any creative industry is to inspire and to be more inspirational than more practical. Because, okay, loungewear is not an option for the business and or homeware. So this is what we do here in Moscow. We're just trying to encourage designers to be more creative and more, more inspirational for the audience. Because this audience is not ready to buy a lot right now at this moment, specifically for independent designers. But if fashion industry will keep its inspirational momentum, it will last and will come over all these challenges. And I hope that everybody here, because we have we have so many countries attended this session. We have Mr. Carl Capas from Milano, Mr. Pascal Moran from Paris, Joan Jorge from Lisbon, Lucilla Boysen from South Africa, Stefan Rabimov from United States, Oregon, Paul Owen is from London, and I'm from Moscow. So, and thanks to the Fashion Futurum platform, we just here all together to share our thoughts and visions how the creative industries and the fashion particularly could survive in this stormy situation.
Thank you, Alexander. While we cannot gather in Russian capital in person, Moscow serves as a digital meeting point for our panelists, who represent 6 great cities across 3 continents. So I already know that we will see some complexity and rich possibilities implied in our very own title of this session: Fashion, Design, and Art of the Future, Rewiring the Creative Power of the World Capitals. But before I introduce our esteemed panelists, I'd like to invite you to another city for a moment in your imagination, and that is Damascus. Damascus is considered the oldest capital city in the world. Its documented presence dates back 11,000 years. It is, for me, mind-boggling to think about all the things people and changes this city has seen over the course of that time. Major empires rose and fell. Old gods were replaced by new religions. Through Damascus, the famous Silk Road found its way from China to the Mediterranean and changed the history of fashion forever. Of course, then we cue in the internet and the Instagram was invented. Historic milestones mark the life of any city. Cities change with the times, but capitals always attract contemporary movers and shakers, people with vision and ambition. Capitals also dictate style. Today, we get to explore how the global pandemic has affected the fashion map and where could fashion enthusiasts go next, both metaphorically and literally. Let me introduce our expert guides. From Moscow, Alexander Shumsky, president of Russian Fashion Council. From Paris, Pascal Moran, president of Fédération de la Haute Couture de la Mode. From Milan, Carlo Capassa, president of Camera Nazionale della Moda Italiana. From Lisbon, Juana Jorge, project manager of Moda Lisboa and Lisboa Fashion Week. From Johannesburg, Lucilla Boysen, founder and CEO of South African Fashion Week. And from London, Paul Owens, director of BOP Consulting and World Cities Culture Forum. Around the world in 80 days used to be a major fun accomplishment. With everybody's expertise here, I think we can get around the world in about 80 questions or less. I will start by asking one question to each of you, to each of the panelists, before proceeding to an open discussion. However, if anyone has additional insights to share on a raised topic, please feel free to contribute in the moment. My first question is for Paul Owens. To help set the scene for us in your work with the World Cities Culture Forum, what impact do you see of the pandemic on world's culture and urban centers?
Thank you very much, Stefan, and also Alexander, for your kind words of welcome. It's a great pleasure to be amongst you all. It's a pity we can't actually be in Moscow itself. As you mentioned, one of the things I do is I act as a director of the World Cities Culture Forum. We're a network of 40 of the world's biggest global cities, including Moscow, by the way. I'm very pleased to have them involved. So if I just gave you an overview, I would say that the impact has been somewhere between bad and catastrophic on those cities generally, but particularly on the cultural and creative sector. And the figure I would say, what we have to sort of keep in mind, and it varies a little bit across the world. So for example, cities in East Asia, as we know, some of which haven't experienced lockdown at all, or in China where they basically came out of lockdown in May, and also some cities in the Middle East who have controlled it quite well. I mean, for most cities, it's really a terrible thing. And the figure I sort of have in my head that I keep on hearing is basically this year, you're 80% down in terms of your cultural activity, your cultural revenues. Yeah. And you've got to remember that most big global cities, if you think about their cultural business model, if you like, the cultural business model is based on a very, very high volume of people experiencing culture, mostly in the center of the city. You've got a very, very high throughput of people. And then you're dependent on this very large, complex, local, regional, international supply chain or ecosystem of service workers, creative talent, all kinds of things. And of course, what the pandemic's done from a public health and an economic lockdown point of view is it's basically shut down the flow of visitors. And that's had a huge impact on the actual atmosphere and the life and the sort of feel of the cities. It's been really interesting, hasn't it? For those of us, I mean, I live in London, as you say. It's really interesting that you understand the importance of culture and creativity in your city by its absence, you know, just because of just the flatness and the blandness of your existence in a city. That sort of intangible feel, that atmosphere, just disappears, and it makes you realize how important it is. So there's an impact on that side of things. there's obviously a huge economic impact. But I think the other thing this is really sort of thrown into relief, and I think this is very relevant to the discussion today about fashion, is just how important the kind of supply chains and the ecosystems are. And of course, once you have that huge drop in revenues coming, from the consumer, that has an instant impact. I mean, literally within days, that has an impact on the economic condition of the ecosystem. And one of the things that we're finding in London and in the UK generally is, even though the government obviously moved very quickly, and we've got both a sort of general support package for businesses, and we've also got a cultural recovery fund. Sometimes that recovery money finds it quite difficult to get through the ecosystem to the individual creative worker. So I'm sorry to paint such a negative picture, and I know this conversation needs to move on to more positive things and inspiring things, as Alexander says, but I think we have to be honest with ourselves that this is a major hit.
Throughout today's panel, we'll get to hear a couple more perspective about this question. But first, I'm curious, and this is a question for Alexander Shumsky. How has the accelerated digitalization of 2020 influenced major fashion platforms such as the Mercedes-Benz Fashion Week Russia and the Fashion Futurum Forum? If you can share your insights with that.
Actually, we digitalized everything, and everything has the digital approach, and this is not a bad thing, I would say. And if we come back to the normal life in upcoming 12 months, we will keep all this digital experience up, and we will use it, because it makes everything we do here in Moscow, it makes it more international. Because we broadcast everything from Moscow, from the Fashion Week, Global Talents Program, and so on. We broadcast everywhere globally in 40 countries, and it gives the international appeal. I think that everything we do now in Moscow became more international this year, much more than it was, 5 years ago, 1 year ago. And this is a good point. I'm trying always to extract something good from the existing situation. And the digital platforms are working quite well. And even for independent, unknown brands, it's a proper way to communicate to the audience. That's the point.
Juana, I'm curious about the Portuguese experience of this question. Can you share your insights about the accelerated digitalization of 2020 and the impact on your fashion platform?
Yes, hello everyone. This period, of course, was very challenging for everyone. I think there was a strong time that everybody was at home. There was this clear idea of lonelitude, of being stuck at home, but also trying to connect against all odds, trying to connect with each other. And that, I think, left us all with the strongest sense of community. And I think that is something that is positive from a positive outcome from the situation. Regarding our project specifically, Moda Lisboa it is a local project. Of course, we have an international impact, but we try to promote fashion in a broader sense and in a good perspective. So we were lucky enough in Portugal to be able to deliver our event in a physical manner and in a digital way, because from the beginning we were aware that to touch people and to move people in fashion digitally is so challenging. And it's what we were talking about, everything becomes flat. All of a sudden, as an audience, you're just scrolling between videos. You end one content and you begin another, and it becomes something very flat. flat, very one way. And we need, I think there is a challenge here for fashion, that we need to make the digital experience something that is more engaging and that it's more in two directions, not only one end. So as a Fashion Week, we were able to, of course, have a strong deliver online and on digital platforms. We reinvented ourselves online. I think most of the Fashion Weeks had to experience that in the last season, but we were lucky enough to deliver physical moments, and we had our designers presenting in gardens, outdoors. So it was for us a moment to consider the system around us and to think what were the right solutions for the challenges we are facing nowadays. So we thought if we can make smaller presentations, we can impact less people physically, but we can make that experience into something that is memorable and that people can take with them for afterwards. And so that was really how we managed the event. Physical, much smaller, but more special, and I think that is the way to go forward. And online, make it different, look at it in a different way. You have to involve other creatives, and you have to think about online and how you stream and how you touch people in a different way. And that is, I think, going to be a challenge for the next following seasons, because I think fashion needs to create new attributes for the digital experience, and that is something that, as a community, we will see that, we will deliver that, but it will be a growing process, I think.
Thank you, Joanna. And I'll come back to ask others about their impact and the experiences. But first, I have to ask my next question of Pascal Moran. Paris has come to symbolize fashion in our collective imagination. In what ways does the city continue to serve as the world's fashion muse, particularly given the challenges of the pandemic?
Well, I don't know if we still work as a muse, but we do our best to be ourselves. And as Paul said, I mean, creative industries, cultural and creative industries are the salt and the spice and crucial part of the life of the urban culture and the life of cities, and also with creativity and innovation. And what happened is that we all of us, we had to react very quickly. We had to innovate very quickly. So for us, our challenge was to create, of course, a platform and an amplification system which would be like a gathering place and also a broadcasting entity with the amplification system again, but like with the same values, the same principles, meaning the same selectivity, meaning also on what we did on this platform with the magazine, with events, crossing cultural activities, partnering with museums, some concerts, etc., meaning reproducing the world, our identity on the platform, just talking about that specifically. Now the question is that, of course, as Joanna said, this is not, there is a need of finding another, of transferring, communicating an emotion in a different way. And we know that anyway, whatever happens, when things get back, this is not the same time, but the vision is not the same. The nature of the physiological emotion and sensorial experience is not the same in the digital sphere. But in other words, we can also say that what happened because we had no choice, we had to innovate. Would that have happened otherwise, let's say, if things had been normal? Yes, it would have. There has been a true and very quick acceleration In a way, my vision of things is that we fully entered the 21st century. And then another question, getting back to your question, not on specifically on the platform, the 21st century, there will be like a complementarity of the physical in-person experiences and digital experiences. And now cities and the players, the actors of the cities, more globally than fashion, need also to innovate and to appropriate things. Because living with our times for fashion and creative industries means also that we cannot rely upon heritage and let's say in the case of Paris, the big cultural and cosmopolitan tradition. We have to introduce that, and also the fact that it has been for quite a time the capital of fashion. For make it last, the important point is just to be yourself, but to innovate and to use the digital as a tool and not as a constraint, knowing that we will not get back, and that might be another question, but we will not get back to the former situation, but for sure now we will even, and we know what's happening, we are glad to talk with each other. It's great to talk with each other by Zoom, and it's a great idea, Alexandra. Thank you again. But we would like so much to be with each other now. And that's the same thing, especially for creative people and for artists and applied arts, fashion being also an applied art and not only a business. So there will be the wish to get back again in the in-person world, which we feel so strongly. It is so difficult now for people not going, even the decision was made in Paris now. It will not be possible to go to museum and cultural station as the way it was planned on December 15th. It will not be possible just to talk and to work with each other and to imagine projects in bars and so many places when the people gather. But let's say we have to hold it and to be herself and to be forward and positive. And this is, I think, what all the designers, many designers behave that way, are just proactive and kicking forward. And this is what we want to be at the future. Even if the future is somehow different, it will be a cocktail of the past and of what we're experiencing now.
Thank you, Pascal. We are aware that culture doesn't happen in a vacuum. Camera Nazionale della Moda Italiana is one of the most internationally engaged governing bodies in the industry. It partners with other national platforms to promote international designers. Think of the existing partnership with Moscow, Budapest, and other cities. Carlo, what motivates you to pursue these partnerships?
Okay, here we are.
No worries,
sorry.
You're back.
I think that fashion is a community. I believe that when fashion is strong everywhere. And what we have to help is to promote the right idea, the culture of fashion. We have to educate people to fashion. So I believe that this works better when we are, I would say, we are more close to each other. We share ideas, we share emotion, we share everything. I believe that fashion is looking more for talent and creativity. And talent, creativity doesn't have any border. It's like an open source for everybody. Obviously, what we have to have together, to keep together, is the basic values. And the basic values are that fashion of the future, for me, must be for sure an open source, but must be sustainable, must be respecting the difference, because this is very important today, and must be for sure digital, physical, and for sure we have to think that we have a big responsibility, because young generation, they look at fashion like a system that influences very much the society. There was a research recently made in the United States that said that 4%, I think, of the people buying fashion, they believe that fashion can do more on a social aspect than a government. This is incredible. This means that we have an incredible power. And this, we have to know how to use it. And the only way to use it is to use it as a community, to share values, to share ideas, and to share projects all together. Everybody with his own point of view, of course. Paris is different than Milan and London and New York, and any city is different. But we have still to think that we have a big responsibility, that we have to be very aligned together on the bottom side.
Thank you for that insight. And of course, I have to ask Lucila about the South African Fashion Week experience. What are some of the unexpected challenges and surprising opportunities of building a competitive fashion presence on a global industry map? Mrs. Boysen, are you with us?
Good day, everybody.
No worries. If you need me to repeat the question, don't hesitate.
No, I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. So yes, just good day, everybody. And I feel really honored to be part of such a distinguished group of a panel. Thank you very much, Alexander. So what we've done in South Africa is very different to any of the other big cities. And we've developed our own sort of system in South Africa, of course. So from the beginning, we were very digitally advanced, so to speak. So the moment we could go onto digital platforms, that is what we've done in South Africa and with the South African Fashion Week. So the past season, we showed the collections of 26 designers. We shot it, and then we did a preview evening where we broadcasted it through a company called CompuTicket, which is a company that sells tickets to moviegoers or to shows. We from there released it on various platforms over 3 months. So we were able to take an event that lasted 4 days with a little bit of a run up in the beginning and at the end, and we turned that into a 3-month footprint, global footprint, which was incredibly exciting. And with that, we managed to get spotlighted by various international communities, and it also challenged the designers. They had to sort of look at bigger and better ways to collaborate. They had to start working with the talent around them, and how they could fuse their designs. They developed new businesses, because they started selling on Instagram and Facebook, which was really fantastic. They learned to connect with their consumers, which is something they never thought was really that important. And they learned, most of all, to weave stories into their social media reporting. They found new ways of working within the limitations, because they had to start printing their own fabrics. And that resulted in an enormous input of culture, because obviously they had to tap into their own culture. And they connected with our natural fabrics. And in South Africa, we have mohair, of course, you know, is very big. Wool is very big. We've got cotton. So yes, the designers were really challenged, but they came out stars. And we generated, just to give you an idea, 326 million rands worth of publicity for our rollout in 3 months. So although, of course, the pandemic was devastating, we see incredible positivity coming out. We can start building our local industry. People are looking at their communities. They're looking at sustainability. They're looking at doing things in a different way. So for us, it is almost on a fashion side, and I can only speak about the fashion side of it, that the positivity that came out of this in building local brands reflecting the culture of South Africa outweighs I would like to say, the pandemic.
Thank you so much. And I'm curious, I'm coming back to Alexander, based on the example of Moscow, how does fashion as an experience and as an industry influence a city's cultural and physical landscape?
I think, last 3 years, Moscow was transforming and focusing on local designers. And Moscow was always a capital of international fashion, I would say, of capital of shopping. But local designers became very, very important, like, 5-7 years ago. And, 3 years ago, shops were opening around showrooms and so on. But now, all activities, of course, they are happening online. And the fashion is still a very important part of the city, and very, a part of visual identity of the city still, and even more now, because the fashion designers and fashion brands, they're quite active online in social networks and so on. And they, they distribute a lot of visions, and they distribute a lot of content, and they became even more visually exposed in 2020 comparing to previous years. And this is not bad, but hopefully it would help them to survive and to work better, and the designers, and this is the point. But on another hand, I think economically, of course, it's a disaster, and it's a challenging time for independent designers particularly. But in the future, I hope it would be much more easy to establish, business and to develop business in the city when lockdown is over and so on, because economically, the rent pricing is down. A lot of things which are actually bad for economy could be a starting point for fashion brands, I hope. So, and fashion is still, very, how to say it, very vibrating industry in Moscow. And fashion designers are very active, and young designers are very active. A lot of sustainable designers appeared on the market in this year. So it's quite, I hope it's going to be positive.
Thank you, Alexander. And I do appreciate the rising optimism as each of you gets a chance to speak. Culture lies at the heart of urban renewal and innovation. Paul, how has fashion impacted the potential future of urban culture?
I think very significantly. I just very quickly like to pick up on a point that Alexander made there as well, if I can, before I move on to your question, which
Please.
is that I think, obviously the big economic hit that these big cities are taking is a disaster in the short term, but it also does open up very interesting opportunities. And if we just take one of the things he mentioned there, which is just the whole idea of what we do with, physical spaces and buildings in our cities. Yeah, the general model for urban development over the past, 40, 50 years has been very, very focused on real estate, on physical development, on essentially getting capital infrastructure into your city. And that's actually had the effect in lots of cities of pushing out creativity, of pushing out culture and creativity. In our World Cities Forum, we have a program called Making Space for Culture, where we've tried to look at this phenomenon, and we've tried to kind of suggest strategies that the creative sector can adopt with mayors and with developers on how to deal with this. And I think what we're looking at post-pandemic in lots of cities is a chance to kind of redefine how we use these spaces and how we use these buildings, and and this is where creative and culture will come into its own. where you get, where you're going to have situations where you've got people who own land and property where they won't know what to do with it. Well, there will not be a demand for some of the sorts of spaces we have in the center of our cities. Guess what? There's going to be really interesting opportunities to do things with the cultural and creative sector. And I think that, there's a great book, isn't there? I don't know whether you've all read this. It's called The Warhol Economy by Elizabeth Currid. It's basically the story of how New York rose to become a kind of global cultural capital in the sort of 60s and 70s. And that story really is about access to cheap space in lower Manhattan. Yeah. And I think we're looking at a sort of a chance for that kind of thing to happen across our cities. But just to sort of come back to your question and address fashion in particular, and just pick up on some of the points other people have said, I think that what's extraordinary about fashion as a cultural activity, as a cultural sector, is just the way it sort of blends tangible and intangible activity, the way it blends creativity and business. And I think it's sort of, the thing about fashion is it kind of touches everything in a city. It touches, people's everyday lives, their sort of culture in an anthropological sense, what they decide to wear, how they decide to sort of identify themselves. But of course, it's a hugely important part of the commercial life of a city and the behavioral patterns of people doing shopping and all this kind of thing. So I think fashion will be an important part of that cultural drive to reinvent our cities. And I think, as Carlo was implying there, I think that fashion can also help to drive progressive, creative ideas about how we live our lives and how we want to develop our cities in the future.
Thank you. And I want everybody to think about the following question while I introduce it. What will fashion shows look like in the future? But first, let me say a couple words. Of course, the show must go on, and this too shall pass. Of course, someone has to be in charge of optimism here. Fashion has always functioned as a litmus test for global social trends. Are the hems going up or down? The belts, are they loosening or tightening? How broad are the shoulders for the current weight of the world? After months of coronavirus lockdowns, the importance of living in the present got us power dressing from waist up and easing into comfort fabrics 24/7. The future is unpredictable, and the bridges to the way things were have truly burned. The current retail crisis has brought a more in-depth understanding on how loudly the fashion system is pleading for dramatic change. We are increasingly aware of the need to minimize waste, provide fair employment opportunities with livable wages, and of course, prioritize sustainability across the entire design process. So back to my question, what will fashion shows look like in the future? Lucila?
Who starts?
I absolutely, thank you, Pascal, sorry. I absolutely agree with you, Stefan. Every single line you've said. But in South Africa, I believe that we're going to carry on as normal, but with more responsibility and with awareness of sustainability. We will spend less and reach more. We will show less and view more. We will charge less and sell more to the consumers, or to consumers that actually care. And on a sponsorship side, we will form long-term relationship with brands that align themselves with the South African Fashion Week's philosophy.
Pascal?
I think that for sure, the visual experience cannot replace the in-person experience for the reason I've said and we've said. So the three-dimensional vision is not the same, although there are quite a number of progress which is made in virtualization, and not only augmented reality, etc. So, I mean, it's clear that that two aspects which are intertwined. The one is, let's say, the fashion fashion as an applied communicative art, and the other thing is business. So all this is connected. But concerning the Fashion Week itself, for instance, for all Fashion Week or Couture Week, there is no let's say, what I mean is that the experience is absolutely crucial, and the idea is it's not necessarily, fashion is not necessarily always an art. Fashion is an art when it is done by an artist. But let's say there is a drive to make an artistic scenography, the notion of total work of art and so on, and then it depends on the money. It's not the same thing for the young designer, the emerging brands, and the big brands. And this will keep on anyhow. But then the point is that as soon as you talk about a total work of art, then or scenography, it's exactly when we went from the theater to the cinema here. It really includes the whole scene. So brands, including young brands, because when they have money enough and they can also rely upon a great community of young artists also, they will try, let's say, to optimize the communication and the creative communication. The point is that the idea of being somewhere, the notion of being physically somewhere, it seems not to matter so much when you live in a digital era. But on the contrary, you have a balance. So the idea of being there, seeing there and sharing that, exactly like in a rock concert. You can have, Travis Scott is not rock, but you can have a concert with Travis Scott on Fortnite, but it doesn't prevent the fact of the great pleasure of so many people to get Travis Scott really on the stage. And this will continue. Then the format can change, as Lucilla said, the format can change, but it will continue. But the digital aspect, which will be appropriate. There is one thing which is important, which is to break fake news. There has been this attack and this critique sometimes on the fact that fashion weeks are not good, or fashion is not fashion is a very bad industry in terms of the second industry in terms of pollution, etc., and that fashion weeks are not good in terms of environmental damages. And this is just fake news. But we have no time to...
I do have to cut it.
I know.
Only because I have to give a fair chance for Carlo and Juana to add their responses.
One word, Stefan. I perfectly understand. One word to say that this is something we have to take care. So this is what we work, and we are not the only one to work on the eco-design of Fashion Week and scenography. And this matters also for the digital aspects. I'm over.
No, I appreciate that. Juana, if you can, in the next 15 to 20 seconds, add anything that you would like additional to what has been said.
I agree with the words of Pascal. I think the fashion, the human and the physical aspect of the fashion presentations and is still relevant. I think we have to rediscover for whom we are delivering the fashion shows. And I think fashion has an opportunity. It is, as none of the other culture areas, fashion brings disciplines together, and it joins technology and gaming and video and music together. So I think in a way the fashion show of the future, it has to be something that is more cultural. It has to be vibrant. It has to bring different audiences together, but there is a lot of space to create new formats. So I think it is a challenging but exciting times that we're going to live.
And Carlo, any words to add to this very insightful?
Yeah. I think something important. We started 2 years ago. We were in the Fashion Week. There was only people from the business. The show was for 500, 800,000 people maximum. So it was very, very specific. And from this pandemic, we learned to use digital For us, this last Fashion Week, we had 45 millions of view on the streaming of our fashion shows. That is an incredible numbers, from 800 to 45 millions watching one show. So there is a big, big change. And obviously the audience is changed. Now is the fashion community, the consumers. What will be after that? We cannot forget that fashion is touch and feel, and I think that will be always very important. We cannot forget that we open a door to talk with the fashion community and with the consumers. Probably in the future, those two doors will be a little bit different. Probably we will have some moments that will be dedicated to the audience, big audience, and some other moments that will be dedicated, like the Fashion Week, as we are used to, more dedicated to the fashion people, to the trade. So I think that those two moments, they could be a little bit together, but with the different direction. We have to learn from this situation, to melt what it happened, and to create something new. But I think we are going naturally in that way.
Alexander, you get the last word with this specific question, unless you think everything has been said.
I think everything was said and all topics were raised, and I totally agree with Pascal, Carlo, Joanna, Lucilla, and Paul. And I would say that from our experience, we did the physical event in October in Moscow. It was not like we did before in the huge venue and so on. We did it tiny with the social distancing, sanitary protocol and so on, and it was mostly for online broadcasting. But the biggest challenge was to reduce the number of attendees, because there were so many people trying to sneak into the shows that I'm absolutely persuaded that the fashion weeks will be the same just in a couple of seasons or right next season after lockdown and after pandemics is over. So, so I think because the physical contact will be never replaced by digital tools. And for the fashion, it's very important to be exposed physically, not only, virtually. So I think this is the point. And for the, exploring the cities, the physical events are very, very important. And the physical connections are very, very important. And that's why we're still working on our events. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to leave you all with this quotation from Irina Bokova, the Director General of UNESCO. A human-centered city is a culture-centered space. Thank you so much for all our panelists for creating amazing culture-centered spaces in your cities and on your continent. Thank you, Alexander, for hosting us. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care and goodbye.